Got ourselves a batch of shinies, Commander.
Welcome to Coordinated Fire, episode 44, a Star Wars Shatterpoint podcast where, what's a meta? Nothing. What's the matter with you?
Can we redo this? Like, this is, I'm sure I could come up with something better.
I'm sure you can too, but we're rolling.
Okay. All right. So that's how we're starting. Hi, everybody. This is what happens when we're missing Sean, apparently.
I'm allowed to do whatever I want.
Yeah.
That's the answer.
So yeah, Sean's away and just for some family stuff. Not sure when he'll be back, but just so everybody knows, he's fine. He's still active on the Discord to some degree, so he'll be around.
Something, adult priorities.
Yeah.
But such is life. But it's been a fun couple weeks from a Shatterpoint perspective for us.
Mm-hmm.
I know, again, Sean had some stuff come up and hasn't been able to do much for the draft league, but I can tell you, I've been having fun with my draft list. Titus, what about you?
I've been having fun, and at the same time, I've been kicking myself for not picking Balin like my plan was.
Yep.
But it's been going good. I like both my lists, so, could be worse.
Yeah, I'm not going to dive too deep into specific games, but I've played two games with each of my draft lists so far. So mine ended up being Veers with Snowtrooper, Lieutenant, and Death Troopers with Vader, Stormtrooper Sergeant, and the Shore Troopers. So that's one side. That list I have been very impressed with so far. I'm just all in on the Stormtrooper synergy, Hunker synergy, and playing the game the way I like to, which is, what am I doing on my turn? Less than I think I am. I am walking, I am taking cover, and we are moving on with our lives. But the amount of attack output that you get to increase when you have a basically coordinated fire take cover action. Thank you, Snowtrooper Lieutenant. Wow, I would kill for that in Republic. Just throwing that out there.
Like, it would be so much stronger in Republic too, because we have Kenobi.
Yeah, which again is affecting primaries as well. But I've been super happy with this list. It's got enough movement to really, really throw a punch. The Short Troopers I've been really impressed with for just good little body holders. And Titus, I know you were on this train for a while too.
Yeah, like it's basically a 7 Scorch stat line with a worse ability suite.
Yep.
But for 4 points, I'll take that, like, happily. You're not expecting them to kill anything. You're not expecting them to hit hard. But in terms of wanting, if you're going with a defensive list where you're going all in on defense, Short Troopers have everything you want. Like, if they can hold on to Hunkers and suddenly they're rolling 8 dice on the range defense, and they have protection steadfast, they're not going anywhere.
They don't go down quickly. Like, it's very rare to go down in one activation of attacks into them. And the amount of heals this list has in particular, I think is part of the Shining Star. Like, again, Vader's got heals on his tree that I think come a little unexpectedly. All the Stormtroopers except for the Death Troopers have pretty good access to heals on their tree, and with Sergeant, you're getting pretty far down those trees pretty consistent. This is one I want to play around more with. The other one I had played a bit before was Veers with Moff, which I also really liked. I think is probably better than Vader, but you also lose out on Sergeant in that list. So like, I want 3 Stormtrooper secondaries in a list. Can I have that? I know. Titus, we need to do a Galactic Legends game, a legendary encounter with all Stormtroopers. That's what I need.
Actually, yeah, that would be way better now than it was previously.
That sounds incredible.
That sounds, considering the Galactic Legends win condition is kill things, that sounds like a nightmare for the Galactic Legend.
All right, well, that's on the list to do. But I'm having fun exploring Veers and Stormtroopers without Morgan. I know when Sean's back, he'll be happy to discuss his Morgan journey, but I'm really enjoying exploring them without and looking at like the Death Troopers or Short Troopers. And even, Titus, you and I were discussing a possible Thrawn list using regular Stormtroopers.
Yeah.
That I think I'm excited to take a look at too.
Yeah, because you still end up with a Stormtrooper Sergeant, and then the Stormtroopers are doubling down more on the healing than the Death Trooper list is, and Thrawn's mobility helps make up for the fact that Veers is notoriously slow. So you don't need the Death Troopers as much. I really like it.
Yeah, so that's one on the to-do list. So the other side of my draft list ended up being Iden and Grand Inquisitor, which is, I would say, the usual, a current usual affair under them. So I took Callus and the ISF. That's ISF? Yeah, with Iden, and then DTE and ESTs under Grand Inquisitor. And Titus, you got to be victim of this list last week.
Yeah,
week before.
It was just a pickup game, thank goodness, because I played Rift Krennic into it thinking, oh, I can race that, because I just came off another game where I was killing absurd amounts. And the ESTs hit like a truck. The ISF still hit really hard. And when you throw in the rerolls from Callus, it's way too reliable.
Yeah, it's in a few runs now. I am really happy with this list. And when we get to our main topic of whatever the current meta is, Iden's one that I want to talk about for sure, because I think she's definitely currently underperforming. I know, and I've said it on the cast a few times in the last while, and especially post rebalance and seeing where we can put the ESTs now. Callus in an Iden GI list increases your reliability to a pretty high degree, especially compared to Hask, where Callus can impact basically anything in the list. You're getting 2 rerolls on the supports, 1 on everything else, and 3 on Callus himself. So spending on that's mostly isolated to Callus or the 2 supports. From a defensive perspective, ISF and Iden both have pretty incredible defensive expertise. So the idea that you can get just 1 more out of even that single reroll is pretty high. So I know there's some obvious benefits on the offense side, but I think there was multiple occasions in the games I played with this so far where I was like, no, one more block or expertise stops me from losing this point or stops this unit from dying this turn. And that's well worth a force.
Yeah.
So, like, yes, there's situations where the math is pretty equal versus Hask and Callus on the attack side, but Hask gives nothing on the defensive side, and GI is giving you plenty of force in this list. Honestly, the only bad activation in this list is Grand Inquisitor himself, who is honestly doing very little on his turns in this list, but he holds the point well.
Yeah, that's fair.
Titus, how you feeling about your draft list? How's that been going so far?
So Rift Krennic was the first one I picked. Oh my gosh, what do I have in that? So I ended up going Rift
a weird
Box,
list,
which is Rift, Nosarai, Aquadroids, and then Krennic. I have Dengar, Han, and Chewie. Which kind of the idea was I can payday either Dengar or Han and Chewie as separatists to get the Riptide dice. But then Han and Chewie can also payday as stormtroopers to make Krennic's activation significantly better, because Krennic has the problem where he's really useful outside of his turn, but on his own turn, he has lackluster activations unless you have a very strong stormtrooper support to activate. And with Han and Chewie, you get that. But what I found out with that game against Kyle is if Han and Chewie go down, twice, the whole list falls apart real bad, like really bad. It performs really well otherwise, but Han and Chewie were much more of a linchpin than I thought they were. So maybe it's a matter of just playing really cautiously with them, but it's a little weird.
And Han and Chewie do go down pretty easily with some focus on them, right? So
now, as for like the synergy of the list, kind of the idea is your support activations a lot of the time, at least once you get some stuff on the midline, you're getting 4 attacks because you do the 2 support attacks, then Riff jumps forward, finishes off something you were attacking, and then Krennic gets to dash and attack because Riff killed something. Now, obviously, those are dice dependent, and sometimes it doesn't happen. But
it's a fun little combo, though.
With the amount of dice you're rolling, the attacks add up. And we know Riff snowballs. Krennic is more just, he needs that mobility to get into play and has pretty reliable shoves, so he's sometimes just stealing a point completely unrelated to what everyone else is doing. And it's a lot of fun. I enjoy it a lot. It's kind of a Rube Goldberg contraption that actually works when it's doing well. But because of that nature, it's very fragile. So
It's super fun, though.
I don't see it being competitive at any high levels anytime soon, but it's a lot of fun if you want to try it out just in like a casual game sometime, or go to like a local league or something like that. You'll have a good time with it. So the other list was PLC Jin, and I ended up going with Luke and the Pathfinders with PLC, and then Jin has Callus and the Commandos. And you'll probably notice that I played a point down for PLC rather than going Baze and Trute. I did have reasons for that. The biggest reasons were, one, I just wanted to use the Luke rerolls and just see how much value I could get out of it. But and also the spy stuff is good. They work really well with PLC. But kind of more than anything, I just didn't have the time to build Baze and Trute, and I knew I wouldn't. So I was like, I'll just play the Pathfinders because I have these things I like about them.
The consequences of them being the big bad in a meta that you didn't want to touch, and now they didn't get built, but you're still burnt out on them. So
not so much burnt out on them. It was literally just I have not had a lot of time, and I don't like borrowing units if I don't have to, which I'm already doing some of because my Callus and my Zeb went on a journey together somewhere, and I don't know where they are, which feels
you don't have your
very
Zeb either?
reminiscent of Rebels. No, Zeb and Callus both disappeared at like the same time, completely missing, no idea where they are.
Weird.
Which like I said, that's an arc in their show, so it's appropriate.
You know what? They're on a little side adventure.
Yeah.
But no, the draft, as always, has been a ton of fun, getting us to play some lists that we don't normally play. Part of this for me was a hobby goal of getting some of my Empire finally painted, and I have not successfully done that. But Titus, to your same point, it's been adult busy, and it's been a little tough to get to some of this. But I also don't like borrowing models, and I am going to need to get that CT box because these EST, Titus, they're legit.
Pretty good. Yeah, they're so good.
These guys might be best for cost support in the game right now. I'm trying to think of something I think is better.
It depends what you're trying to do, but in terms of just value for points, they're pretty close.
It's up there.
Yeah, like they definitely don't have the defensive capabilities some things have. There's always value to be had in something that has displacement, like Fifth Brother, but like in terms of damage output, they're ridiculously reliable. And
4 costs that I think can confidently take down a 5 cost. Yeah, I'm on board.
Yeah. Like the fact that they reliably get 2 crits from their expertise and their tree is only 4 long, it's very reliable. And they expose on 3. So
and obviously get to dash and focus themselves, and it's a whole
and they roll 9 dice.
One more,
just without any buffs,
without any external buffs. Easy breezy. Plus 2 rerolls. The off chance you flub that dice roll. Very, very impressed. No, I think so. For I guess 2 topics we wanted to go over today, Titus.
Wanted to talk about the meta just in general and some like statistics and stuff that we've been seeing, because I know we haven't done kind of a general meta episode, and we keep saying we need more time. I think we've had that time, and while I don't think the meta has settled, we can make some conclusions.
If I were to sum up my conclusions, Titus, is that this is whose meta is it anyway, and the stats are made up and the list don't matter.
Yeah, I think so. We do have a good number of games played, but like I'm really starting to come to the conclusion that it's very much skewed by the fact that we have a small community. You could see that there are certain things that specific players really like, and they do well with those, and that ends up being able to skew the stats because the community is small enough where individual players can skew the stats. Like if a player plays 20 games with a certain unit, that really changes what the win rate will be. Yeah,
so I think, Titus, we want to go through I would say short list, but I think I've got about half the cast of primaries up right now in different tabs.
That's not a short list.
It's not a short list. And discuss kind of what's working, why it's working, or why we don't know why it's working or why it's not working.
Yeah.
And then go through some kind of final takeaways, because I think you and I are pretty aligned on the wavelengths of thinking that Honestly, any projections for meta right now are anecdotal at absolute best. And we were chatting before the cast, and I think if we saw this entire list shifted upside down in 3 to 6 months, I would not be surprised.
Yeah, like I would not be either.
So aside from a couple primaries that have very low amount of games, our standout since the rebalance currently is Mace Windu, sitting at a 63% win rate. And Mace is an interesting one where I feel in a lot of the competitive community that Mace gets dismissed as, oh, I can just avoid being in the bubble, or I can avoid being engaged.
Yeah, we talked about that last 2 weeks. Well, 2 episodes ago.
We did. And I think we're still continuing to see Mace put out results. So, and I am a huge fan of playing Mace. I think Mace in current state of the game is probably my favorite primary. I think he's a ton of fun, but I think he requires some very specific list requirements, which is why there's a few things he's working really well with that I think is really great for him. And I want to go over that. One, I think prior to rebalance, we were already in a position where Padme was a great pairing for Mace. And that's partly because she can move him. Not only can she move him, she can full advance him. You get movement on basically every activation of the list that can move Mace, and I think that's a requirement for a Mace list. When I'm looking at list building for Mace, it's one, I do need to keep Mace engaged in a lot of scenarios. So the more activations I have that can move Mace, the better position I'm in, which is why I really like Mace with things like Padme, Kiadi-Mundi a little less so, but we'll touch on that a little bit. Or something like Obi, where Obi may not directly be moving Mace, but provides Mace the opportunity to move when attacked, which does the same thing. I think he's an incredible force battery, and there are some units in Republic that ask for some very intense force costs, whether that's displacement abilities, that's 7 Scorch being able to just use Rule 17 whenever they want.
Yeah, that's a huge one right there, because even with the attack going to melee, the value of that is almost as much the dash. I would say even more so than the attack.
Yeah. And again, in most lists, if they don't have an attack target, I won't spend that because I don't have the force to just spend a force for just a dash. In this list, I do very reliably. And same with Rex with I'm Always First Kid, which is why Rex ends up my priority secondary with Mace. A lot of the time at this point is one, Rex can move Mace. Mace getting a hunker is just good news, whether that's with Obi or not. And you've got the I'm Always First Kid on Rex is something that in any other list you get to use maybe once in a game where you've got the right opportunity and the force to actually spend. That again in this list, same with Rule 17 on 7 Scorch, is just something you can just do for the dash.
Yeah, it's a good ability because if he does get the attack, you're likely shoving twice, which in and of itself is just so strong.
Looking at results so far, the main 77 games with Padme is huge at a 69% win rate. 13 games with Obi is very low to me. And we'll get that into a little more when we get to Obi. And then at a loss rate, we're looking at things like Anakin and Kiadi. And I think you end up too invested in one specific thing, especially in that Kiadi pairing where Kiadi's job is to discount your force abilities for your Jedi. Mace is giving you a ton of force. I've played this pairing a couple times, and the amount of times I end my order deck and have 5 force left over.
They're also kind of counterproductive because Mace is protecting your stuff, so a Jedi likely isn't going to get a discount because things aren't dying. And Mace also doesn't spend force himself except via an innate ability, which can't be discounted. So they're running at cross purposes.
Yeah, the only thing I will give that pairing is I think it is the best one for enabling Mace to be on Vapad more often than not and be a murder machine instead of that. But honestly, he's not even the best at doing that job. You compare Mace, you're better off with Anakin, you're better off with Jedi Hunter Vader. Kiadi doesn't do what's best for Mace, and Mace doesn't do what's best for Kiadi compared to things they could be paired with on either side. Again, I don't think it's bad. I don't, but I understand why that would be on the lower side. And then you look into mission selection, and historically one of Mace's weaknesses was being slow. I don't think that's the case anymore. I think the amount of movement you can take in the list, I think having access to the ranged attack is hugely buffed Mace's ability to just get somewhere if needed. 76% win rate on odds. His worst win rate is actually on strategic positions, where he has the most games right now at 48 games and 52% win rate. And this is interesting because I think Mace is really good on this mission. But I think what you take it into is part of what matters here. And I think the other missions highlight a little better how good of just a point holder Mace can be on just get him on a point on a far off objective, and your opponent just won't go there. Unless they have a very specific way of dealing with him and getting him off that point. Mace is also, doesn't have to be his bubble. He can just be holding a point and still be very worth having as a force battery and I think strategic positions relies so heavily on making sure that bubble's active. And Titus, I know you mentioned this earlier, but it puts you in a scenario where you could be using too much of your out of activation movement just on Mace. Yeah. When the mission also asks for so much of it to get to the far edge objectives, where you're like having to share the priorities of, okay, I need to get Mace engaged in the middle, but I also need to get to these edge points.
Yeah, the corner points are just... they demand a lot of movement to get to. And I don't think that was quite clear early on when the mission first came out, because we were really focused on, it's really heavy in the center. But if you're going to the center and then you are having to constantly go out to these far corner points, it's tough. There's a lot of lateral movement is kind of what I was getting at. Because like you go to the center quite often, and some lists struggle just to get to to cross to the center point, but then once you're there, you're often having to go back to the corners, and it's there's a lot more lateral movement between struggles than I think we gave it credit for.
Yeah.
Because it's not what we've seen before, where it's I have to try to run all the way across the map crosswise, whereas now you're going side to side a lot.
Yeah, and one thing I notice on strategic specifically is how important it is to end struggle 1 with things crossing the midline. This has become a priority on this mission, is I just need to get things across this line, to be able to play the full board once this switches. Like a fast struggle 1 on strategic, where you end up with, okay, I only got like 1 thing to the mid, 2 things, 3 things to the midline, and nothing really past, can lead to a really rough struggle 2.
Yeah, it's one of the only missions where it's almost likely that none of your home objectives are active struggle 2.
Yes.
Like not a single one. And I'm completely off the top of my head here, but I don't think the other missions have that for struggle 2. I think there's almost always something in your home, and maybe I'm just making that up, but
I think that's very likely true, at least more so here than other places. In short, with Mace, and I think we'll be able to get through a couple other primaries quickly based on the conversation we had here, but you are going to see Mace as I think a staple for a bit here. I think in taking almost a place of like where Obi normally sits after transitioning from a rebalance, where Mace a lot of the time presents a stat check on, can you get through protection and steadfast? And do you have the tools to deal with this? Because if not, this is going to be a breeze.
Yeah. If you're a unit that expects to get 1 to 2 results, and you shove damage step 1 and do 1 damage step 2, you just kind of lay down and cry if you're going into Mace. And there's actually a lot of units that are like that.
We also have a lot of pretty good double shovers in the meta right now. We're just turning that into a single shove with some good positioning can just drastically change their output. Moving on, Luminara is I think one of the more unexpected highlights from the balance update.
Obviously, she's our secret 5th separatist, right?
She is a secret 5th separatist. So she's sitting at a 61% win rate so far. One thing I wanted to highlight here is, for the majority, most primaries, their go first and go second win rate are pretty close together. She's at a 56% go first win rate and a 65% go second win rate.
That makes sense to me, because her lists tend to be all about the aggression, trying to kill something. And if you go second, you have a target. If you go first,
100%. Yes, Titus, that's the magic. Can't debate the facts, but I think looking at, she's actually got a good variety. Now, the majority of those games have been with Grievous, but we've got some solid win rates with Balin, with Anakin, with Riff. Surprisingly, Obi, but we're low amount of games there. But none of that surprises me. She's just pairing well with things that are going to go out and do a lot of damage. One of the, I think, post rebalance, people walked away with the Separatist updates as a little disappointed. I know there was not sure where the B1s were fall. Some called it a nerf. The B2s were, I know there was definitely some hype out there, but overall a middling reaction, I would say. I think post now, from both playing and playing against Separatist lists at this point, the Separatist buffs were very real. The double tactical droid Grievous Lumi list with B2s and B1s, if you had told me in any prediction that Riff would be out of the question, Riff and Aqua droids would be out of the question for meta Separatists, I would have called bullshit. But this is really proven to be a very strong list. I would say in a top contender for some of the best aggro lists, just for raw kill power in the game right now. And it's just maximizing
very much a classic
those
list too.
B2s. What was that, Titus?
I said it's very much a classic list.
100%.
It's something people are familiar with, but with a new spin on it.
This is wave one cool. Shatterpoint with honestly only some updates to both support units. It is performing really well. I think with the right pilot, I think that the sky's the limit for this thing. We're seeing 70% win rates on things like Sabotage Showdown, 61 on shifting, 69 on Never Tell Me the Odds. Strategic positions, again, we dropped to 48. Which is interesting. That mission seems to be playing out a little differently than I would expect. And this list performing as well as it is on odds. Again, we're still relatively low game count here, but it's really cool to see this list on the table. I am honestly just happy to see Separatists and see Separatists in a relevant spot.
I love that we go, oh, Luminar is a primary, and immediately it's just a Separatist conversation.
100%.
She is so key to that faction at this point.
Yeah, because they now have honestly a very reliable ability to consistently wound, and she gives the reward they need for that. And honestly, all the faction needs is a primary that just has a unwound do something valuable, and I think we'd see that. But
apparently Barriss got turning on the Jedi honestly. Because her master's real good at it.
She was a Separatist the whole time. But again, if you're going to an event, this is on the list of I would expect to see this. And if you have not had some practice into it, it is more than the sum of its parts. I think is what I would call that. Padme, I think I covered a lot during the Mace conversation. Her best pairing continues to be Mace, although Kit is right up there at a 68%. But we're a 68% win rate with Kit, 69% win rate on Mace. And to be honest, her overall 59 is only being held back by some thematic pairings of Padme Anakin, Padme Vader with some high amount of games. Not a single mission where I would say she has a bad win rate. They're ranging from 55 to 65%. This is an interesting one. Padme has a lot of tricks.
Yeah.
I think this win rate is very likely to come down a bit when people learn how to play against Padme a little better, understanding what's going to trigger things, especially when you add Sabe to the mix. There's a lot of gotchas. And I know I have a habit of just walking through. This is what's going to happen when you gain momentum. This is what's going to happen with Shatterpoint flips. This is what's going to happen when you attack a primary is one of those conversations I'm having with my opponents, because there is a decent amount of, nothing's really done this like this before with Padme since the rebalance. But her box in particular and herself are still incredibly squishy.
Yeah, and something to be noted, I don't think either of us expect her to go down a lot. We're talking a few percent points, going from 59 to 55 sort of thing.
She's very good.
On top of that, even if you know all the tricks, it's a lot to keep track of. And just because you're avoiding it doesn't mean you're making good decisions to avoid it. There's an element of decision paralysis that you kind of run into when there's that many different things you're having to avoid. especially when you're looking at Mace or Kit, where it's like, okay, I gotta keep track of their bubbles and where they are, and like there's a
Well, yeah,
lot going
let's
on.
look at her top 3 pairings. You're having to deal with what Padme does and what she's going to react to, combined with a protection steadfast bubble with Mace, with Kit being, I would say, one of the highest skill expression primaries in the game right now, up there with Riff, and Kit's doing things that we haven't seen in the game before. And then third is Obi, which people have the practice and understanding of, but also does something very unique and reactive. So I think when you combine these things, you are forcing your opponent into just some tough decision points.
Yeah, like the Obi-Wan especially, that scares me going into that, because you can't attack anything. Like,
Nope.
you just like, if you attack anything to any degree of success, you're like, there's several things moving. You don't even have to kill it necessarily. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we are not done seeing Padme by any means. I do think that she's pretty locked in with the Mace, the Kit, and maybe the Obi pairings. I don't think there's much that we're going to see from a surprise for other pairings with her. Those strike me as certainly the best options.
Yeah, like there's definitely a force issue. So I really don't like, you need something that's force neutral beside her at the very least. Ideally, something like Mace where it's force positive. But like Kit's fairly force neutral, and he can absolutely make it go. And he's fast enough that the Padme list can just win before the force problems come up.
Yeah, and I think I think that's why you see a lot of the pawns and Seven Squirch package in, whether it's with Padme herself or on the other side of the list, because that is completely force neutral. To a point that we talked about positives with Mace is that Seven Squirch can rule 17 till the cows come home. They also don't have to. They're still an incredible unit and never using that ability once.
And like we talked about when we talked about the shore troopers before, 8 health, protection steadfast is one heck of a point holder.
Sure is, and with their defensive expertise on top of it. So awesome. Jumping in, and we'll start going through these probably a bit faster. Not faster yet, because I did want to dive a bit harder into Morgan. So
Should we hit Morgan Veers at the same time? Because they're pretty intertwined.
We will talk about Morgan and Veers at the same time. So Morgan's sitting here currently at a 56% win rate since her launch / rebalance, which happened basically at the same time, at astronomical 251 games compared to, which is much higher than any of the other primaries.
The next closest is Veers.
And that's 112 of those games are with Veers, which is a lot, but like, that's still also a lot of games without Veers. The most interesting stat I want to look at Morgan. So look, when we talk about win rates in Shatterpoint, a lot of times we lean to primary one because that's what the statistics tell us, and what can be taken with them. When I say Morgan's at 56%, from my side, that's because Night Troopers are at 56%. They are an incredible support, and I think we're coming out of the initial read of their card, I think we all came with we need to see this on the table to see how this really is. They're a massive pain in the ass, is what they are. Yeah. The dropping in expertise of the attack against you is so impactful.
Combined with having a good defense pool to begin with.
They are just miserable to attack into and have become very good. I personally, Titus, I know you're a bit higher on opinion of her. Like, I have not been impressed with Morgan herself from what I have seen across the table. I have not played her personally. I will say that.
Yeah, you haven't played her. And also when you've played against her, you've had some good luck with the order deck.
Yes.
To the point where you've won before she activates. So
yeah, at least, or like was a late activation when the game was nearing its ending, at least, and she wasn't able to get far enough to really impact the game.
Yeah, I do find on some missions you can make her first activation really bad because she's melee only. She's not particularly fast.
Yeah,
it's very easy to just stay back and say, well, yeah, you hit hard, but if you never get close to me, it doesn't matter.
That has been my experience. Now, looking at the things that Morgan's losing into or has lower win rates into is interesting, and part of that is Mace is on there. She's 44% win rate into Mace. Boss is on there, 46%. So it makes sense for the things I've been playing lately as well. But you also see like she's not doing so hot into Ewoks so far, or Leia. But Titus, the one you wanted to highlight here was 39% into Balin, and then with a decent amount of games.
Well, so yeah, I I have found that the Morgan Veers list is weirdly the best matchup I've had for Balin. Now, I've been playing the Balin Ahsoka 1 variant, but I couldn't even necessarily pin down why it's good. Just every time I have played that, and I've played against a lot of Morgan Veers,
There's been a lot of Morgan running around.
it just feels like everything matches up really well. It's another slow list, so I'm not punished for playing a slow list. But also, between Shaak Ti and Balin, the displacement is ample enough that the night troopers become much less of a problem. And if the night troopers are a lot less of a problem, you're left with a lot of slow stuff. Because Enoch's also fairly slow, Veers is slow, Morgan's slow. Depending on what the other player's bringing, either Snow Trooper Lieutenant, who is fairly slow, Shore Troopers are slow, Death Trooper Escort, those are kind of the bigger concerns. But like, it's a lot of stuff that is going the same speed that the Balin list is. So Balin
Where that's
actually
a
has
disadvantage
time.
against some other lists.
Yeah. Balin also has one of the distinctions of he can add expertise. So you can fine tune your expertise like through the Night Trooper thing, which helps with fighting them. Just in general, it feels like there's a lot of things matching up well there. I couldn't tell you exactly why that is, but it feels good every time I play it.
Fair. The other thing I wanted to highlight on Morgan, which I think is really interesting, is missions. So she has the most games on Sabotage Showdown, and she's at a 48% win rate on Sabotage versus a 65% on odds, 64% on shifting, 61% on strategic. And I think you can run into I want to play Morgan on Sabotage because she is a little slow, where there's some other slow aspects of the list. I think that struggle 1, throwing out 6 possible objective points, lowers the value of the Night Trooper because it becomes much easier to just avoid the point that the Night Troopers are on, or points that the Night Troopers are on.
The one thing I find about the Sabotage is if you're going first and you have Sabotage, you have a guaranteed play where turn 1, you take the 2 side points with the Night Troopers because you just reserve them with Veers, start to spread them out. Then you go with the Night Troopers, put them on the side points, hunker them. It makes it very hard for your opponent to score back. The problem is you really need to bank on the fact that they can't break that lock early.
Yeah.
Because you run out of steam real fast. Because again, Sabotage, it's very easy to play keep away from Morgan.
Yeah,
So
in my mind, that is a more effective tactic on any other mission. And I get I'm now on 4 objectives. I get the benefit there. But
it's a scoring 4 is what it is.
Yeah, I look at, would I rather hold my back line and have 2 of the midline with the Night Troopers on shifting? 100% I would. If I think the Veers dash on the reserve at the start of the game is getting you way more value on odds, strategic positions, and that initial activation on shifting that's hard to come back.
Yeah. And like I'm not saying you're wrong there. I'm saying I understand what the appeal is.
I get the thought. Yeah,
and it might be a bit of a mirage is kind of what I'm getting at. Is it seems really good, but on Sabotage, scoring 4 isn't quite the trump card it is on the other missions.
Yeah, you can get a lot of 4 and 4 back and forth on Sabotage,
or even just 4 and 3 back and forth, which drags the struggle out a lot
for a very long.
And for a list that seems like it's really defensive, I don't think it does great with the long drawn out struggle 1.
Moving on out of Morgan, we've seen a lot of Hunter play, which honestly, just from a games perspective, was a little surprising to me. 163 games. It's great to see Hunter out and not with just Boss. I think Hunter Boss is still in a great position for a list. Nothing to highlight here, I think, but just no mission that Hunter's doing particularly bad in. Hunter's doing 58% with Boss. So like, I think more so the highlight here is that Boss Hunter is still a thing you're going to see. This is a list that's going to be out there. I have run this a few times. It still feels it is a shell of its former self, but it still feels very good.
Yep, no, I agree.
So the next one I wanted to highlight was Armor. And Armor is at 154 games. I would put Mandos on the list of something that I was expecting to see shoot up pretty strongly from a performance perspective post the rebalance. I've said this quite a few times on the cast. I still look at Mandos as what baseline good Shatterpoint should look like. And when I say Mandos, I am pretty specifically talking about Armorer Mando. I know there are some strong advocates on Ahsoka variants, Maul variants, but I'm talking just all the Mandos you can possibly put in a list. And Armor's come out initially was pretty low on the offswing of the rebalance, but has climbed up to 55% and 154 games. We have another case here of a bit of a variance between the go first rate and go second rate, this time with a 57% win rate on go first and a 51% win rate on go second. And I think that's representative of some pretty different win rates when it comes to missions. They're all hovering in the 50s. But, when you look at shifting priorities at 58 and strategic positions at 55 compared to like sabotage at 51 or odds at 50, you definitely have some preference. And for me, that comes off as just missions that Paz is good on and missions that Paz is not good on.
So this is kind of giving me thoughts about the missions. We talk a lot about what lists are fast, but I don't think we talk a whole lot about what kind of speed they have, because
Agreed.
There's a difference between I give a lot of dashes to a lot of units, or I get a lot of movement on one unit, or I get advances or stuff like that. Because the Mandos are traditionally something we consider a fast list, but they're doing best on slow missions, which I think it really has to do with it's all dash speed.
I agree.
Little tangent, but still.
Yeah, no, I actually, that was part of my kind of end result summary. And we are seeing a lot of points where this primary is doing really well, except for on this one mission where they're actually way under the curve compared to how they're performing. We see a lot of the things that are good on shifting and strategic may not hit sabotage or odds in the same way. And I think we are in a space where mission selection is becoming very important. And I think never tell me the odds will end up again a pretty meta defining piece, quite frankly, as it has since the mission came out. But what is good on odds, I think, has shifted drastically. With the nerf to infiltrate, with really just pawns and veers being your only two real ways to guarantee your kickoff points, that's becoming less of the definition and more about lists that can put tough bodies and hold points and get to them in the first place.
Yeah.
Do you have both enough speed and enough defense to hold a point? Which I think is a really interesting space for odds.
Yeah, because often if you can rebuff the first attack, it's going to be a couple activations before something else can get to you.
Yeah, if your opponent fails to flip a point on a turn where they need to, that is game-changing on odds. I think mission exploration is going to be an interesting defining point of this meta. And honestly, I also, as it has again since the beginning of the game, shifting priorities is again going to be in that space, and I'm coming back to a space where I really like shifting again.
I still find it boring. I've been playing a lot of it, and it's boring.
Yeah. So Cassian is going to be actually be doubling down on my point I just made with Armor. So Cassian with 109 games, coming from probably the heaviest hit individual unit from the rebalance at a 54% win rate. Cassian's at 60% win rate for going first and a 48% win rate when going second. And that is coming down to mission. Cassian is sitting at a 67% win rate on Sabotage Showdown, 53 on strategic, 43 on odds, and 38% on shifting priorities.
So basically it's the missions where you can get from a point to another point on a dash. So you can punish people with that revenge.
So, and I think your double revenge lists are still performing exceptionally well on Sabotage. I also think in an interesting spot from a meta perspective, your aggressive melee damage lists, again, your Kiadi Anakin, your Kiadi Vaders, and a couple other options like in a little more niche, but like your bounty hunter list kind of thing that are going to lean towards Sabotage Showdown because they either need to be in melee or don't have quite the movement. Your double revenge is going to punish the hell out of it.
Yeah.
which is to the other point on Cassian, where we're at a 67% win rate with Leia. Same with Mando. That's a much lower game count. 57% on Kanan. So our double revenge Cassian lists are still performing well. What's pulling Cassian down is a 48% win rate when paired with Jin, with 43 games, which is a big chunk of what's kind of pulling that down. So in short, kind of the same message that I gave with Boss Hunter. Your Cassian double revenge list is alive and well. It just has some weak points on mission selection, which I think is a really healthy spot for something like this to exist.
I'd still be interested to see some exploration on Cassian bounty hunters, because I don't think there's been much of it. And
there was a window of time last meta where before Baze and Shura came out where that was strong.
Yeah, it was probably one of the best aggro lists outside of the Iden lists that were running around. So,
and I think there's probably still some play there. Just what that looks like. There's so many variables that you can take in that list, but I think
yeah,
I might actually get my Cassian built. But I think there's definitely some more exploration here. And again, I think from a revenge perspective, our friend Cassian isn't going anywhere. Boss I covered with Hunter. Had him over here. Veers we talked about. In short, we talked about Veers during Morgan, but Veers is doing very well with Morgan and nowhere else.
I'm surprised. I would have expected a little bit from, like, say, the Thrawn or Vader pairings, but
we're at, I guess, at 50% with Thrawn at 14 games, but the ones I would have expected to be doing well, your Vader at 44%, your Moff at 43%, Krennic at 40%. I'm exploring this space a little more because I don't think it quite matches up in justification, but I think we see a similar thing on Veers of making a mission mistake. We got Veers at 81 games of his 201 on Sabotage Showdown at 48%. But his win rate on odds is 55, on shifting is 57, on strategic is 55. I think our great equalizer that has always been Sabotage Showdown might be a bit of a trap right now.
Yeah.
In some certain cases.
And I know Veers really supercharges the Night Troopers, and I wonder if it could be as simple as just taking Moff instead of Morgan and still having Enoch and the Night Troopers and seeing how that does. Because, that adds a bit more mobility. It makes the list a bit more well-rounded. That's not to say Morgan's the bad part there, but it would give you a different play style while still having those strengths.
Yeah, it's second lowest mission played. And, I can tell you that if I was running Veers and trying to make this a competitive run at this, I'm running that on shifting. And I have been a very loud advocate for a long time at how important opening plays are on shifting priorities. And this is probably the most reliable one there's ever been.
Yeah, shifting is still the hardest one to make a comeback on. You need to win that first struggle. And if you don't, it's a slog trying to come back. You can do it, but it's tough.
So this is definitely one that I'm going to be experiencing more. I'm having a ton of fun with Veers. I think there's a lot of stuff about the Stormtrooper synergies that is very up my alley. So this is one I'm going to be playing with a bit more. Moving on to, I think, getting into some more surprises in performance. I think post rebalance, all three of us called Ki-Adi-Mundi the expected all-star. I think our call was if any primary coming out of that rebalance was still it is going to be an S tier. Ki-Adi-Mundi was it, and we are not seeing that in almost 200 games, sitting at a 53% win rate.
Yeah, we expected Ki-Adi Vader specifically to be one of the big meta lists, and I don't think that's materialized at all.
No, Ki-Adi Vader, 65 games, 57% win rate. It's nothing to sneeze at, and is absolutely something you need to be prepared to play against and see. Still very true. No other Ki-Adi pairing is performing well. I was expecting a bit of a resurgence in the Ki-Adi Anakin that's sitting at 50% at 50 games. I think there's a lot to punish this right now. I think there's a lot of lists that are outpacing this.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's currently Ki-Adi's sitting at a 65% win rate on strategic positions, 51% on sabotage, but shifting and odds are both 43% and 40% respectively.
Man, this is making me really reevaluate stuff because a lot of these win rates are contrary to what I expected in terms of missions.
100%.
Yes. I didn't realize how much mission meta had changed. What is good on what.
Yeah, and I think if you're looking at how do I approach this meta and you're asking a question of what do I take, what mission do I take, I think reevaluate some preconceptions on what missions are good and what are not, because I think the things that dominated some missions before are very toned down. Sabotage isn't necessarily going to kill you running into a revenge list. You don't have the same dominance that some old things did on like Never Tell Me the Odds. And I think strategic is different from a lot of the initial reads on what's good on it and what's and what's not. And I think there's going to be a while before this settles. And I think, and I'll caveat here again, is we're longer than I thought we were going to be into chatting about this current meta. This is all preliminary data. We are still talking in the grand scheme of things, a relatively low number of games. There has not been a huge amount of events going on that would push competitive players. And obviously
events are smaller.
Yeah, there's a lot of smaller events happening. We're also in a state where we see a huge amount of games in either the new boxes that came out or things that were hit with the rebalance. So once this settles, I think a lot of these high win rates are defined on what some very strong players chose to take versus they are definitively, this is the best things going on. So again, these numbers could flip on their heads. But I think there are some decision points to make on, okay, what list do I expect to see? What mission should I be taking? What mission are maybe my bad matchups not so strong in as a factor here? But I think my biggest takeaway, Titus, I think is the same as yours, that mission selection is becoming a much higher variance from the early data than I would have expected.
Yeah. And we've only had 2 months too. So like there's only been so much time to iterate on the results we have had. So like the just as much as the low games played, the time to turn around and evolve lists has been pretty low.
So, yeah. The last thing I will say on Kiati is I think Kiati's overall meta performance is a lot of the time defined in how much do I need to displace some key targets. And in this current meta, which I think is starting to be defined around speed, that displacement doesn't go as far, right? Where when a huge part of the meta is going to be revenge lists, which we're not seeing at what we were, well, in those lists, displacement is a huge value because you're turning off your opponent's main mechanic and identity. You're not killing something, you're just pushing it away. We haven't seen an Obi come back like I would have expected, which hates walking into heavy displacement. I just don't think we have what's primarily being played the most as things that like, oh, if someone displaces that, I'm in a tough spot. That makes sense?
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I don't really have anything to add because like it's all true. And I think we're seeing a bit of that whole rock, paper, scissors triangle aspect at work. And it may be that we start rotating through that, but it's really reinforcing that's not something we've had.
I think we are actually
it's completely surprising.
Titus, to your point, I think we are going to see a bit of a rotation of this is going really high. And then people are thinking, okay, I need to play against this. I need to do this. And then something else can come in, take advantage of that, which again is a sign of a healthy meta. Like if anything, none of these lists that are currently of like, yeah, you'll probably see this and it's performing really well, stand out to me as, well, this isn't beatable or I can't play against this. Like of anything to take away from this conversation to anyone listening out there, we're in a really healthy spot.
Yeah. Yeah. Like there's nothing out there that the best counter is the mirror, which is always kind of the sign of, oh, the meta is bad.
And as we're going to flow into some more tabs I have open here, we're going to talk about some primaries that I think are underperforming, but have every chance to play in the leagues that of the list that we're talking about here. I had the Mandalorian open here because I've been really wanting to play Mando lately, and I think Mando's a great time. I think Mando's back, and in a pre-Cassian era, Mando was my favorite and personal opinion of best revenge trigger that there was on just this is great every time it goes off and will generally be impactful. Is honestly 54% win rate with armor right now at 109 of his games, 49% win rate with 44 games with Balin. So like it's working, but it's fine. Honestly, only being held down by 47 games at a 45% win rate with Cad.
And Cad Mando's always been kind of bad.
Yeah, has always sat in that kind of performance range. But again, why I had this open was to talk about missions again. 76 games on Sabotage, 57% win rate. 53 games on Shifting Priorities, 57% win rate. But you look at Strategic Positions at 77 games, 47% win rate. Never tell me the odds. 21 games, 43%. First Contact has a negligible amount of games on any primary, and it doesn't not worth talking about.
It's worth talking about in that if you bring it, you might catch people off guard because no one's
That's
playing
true.
it.
Because no one's playing it. Also, you're a bad person and you should feel bad. But doing well at the missions that Mando's honestly always done well at, and struggling with odds and strategic. I don't think anything big there. Now, Balin. Balin is sitting at a crisp 51% win rate, which is honestly a pretty sweet spot for just Balin's pretty good.
It surprises me, honestly, because he's doesn't have a lot of options, and most people I've talked to that have played him have been underwhelmed. Like, he's a lot of fun, but he just doesn't do anything all that exciting.
I agree. There's a lot of, it's just you're building lists with good individual parts.
Mm-hmm.
Titus, to a point you made last time we were talking about Balin, his worst mission currently is strategic positions, and that is most games played. But he's doing well on sabotage and shifting, and 50-50 on odds.
That all tracks to me, because odds and strategic are really the ones where you need movement to be able to cross the table, and his box can't do it.
I think he's currently
but
he's shining currently with the list of generic primaries, because again, he doesn't really have much direct synergy with very much, but 57% win rate with Maul at 40 games. 56% with Ahsoka, and Titus, I assume that's mostly you.
No, I actually haven't had a ton of luck with it, to be honest. I've been about 50-50, so.
Fair enough. Balin Leia at 11 games, Balin Mando 44 games, 49%. So a lot in that route. There's a lot that's been attempted at some much lower win rates. I will throw this out there to anyone listening to this beautiful podcast right now. Someone has played 11 games with Balin and Hondo at a 73% win. I have not been able to find who has done this or where those games were played. If someone listening to this could point me in the direction, or if you are the lovely person out here playing this majestic pairing, please tell me. I want to know what's going on here. I want to know the list. I want to know what's working, because I want to play this, and I think in my head currently it's bad.
Yeah, like I could see the synergy.
Scoundrels
I just don't know
good.
what you take.
I have to, again, and Tice, you and I chatted about this earlier, but like in my mind, that would be Hondo, Ezra, R2.
I could also see something like a Hondo something Pirates, but those are probably the two options there.
But if somebody can tell me what's going on here, please, thank you. A couple other primaries that I think are lower than where they should be, and I find a bit surprising. Obi as a whole at a 48% win rate. Overall, generally lower. 166 games played, so actually not that bad. Has been played with a wide range of primaries.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is part of where the win rates, but nothing's really above a 54% that has any sort of decent games played. But like, Obi Mace is at 54%, but only 13 games played. Obi Anakin at a 52% win rate at 30 games, and I don't think that's a good pairing. I think this is definitely a case, and Titus, you called this out, but like the diehard Obi players have taken a bit of a break, probably relied on it pretty heavily across the last meta as a viable option. I'm surprised. Typically in a shift in the game, Obi is all reliable. This is making me want to get him back on the table. Because I think there's still a bunch of games with Boss, and I think all the reasons that was a good pairing are kind of gone.
Well, Fixer's still there, but
Fixer's still there. There's a lot of pairings with a lot of games with Hunter at a solid 49%. I just think he's not being played enough in a competitive way, and there's a lot of variance in the pairings here, so I think I just need to get him back out there.
Yeah, I really think it's part of it is a lot of people stop playing him, the ones who are experienced. Meanwhile, you have other people taking him up, and he's a high expertise piece. So somebody who is just playing him for their first event or even their second event is going to struggle with him more than, say, picking up Maul. And that's not to say that Maul isn't have some level of expertise, but it's they're different floors. Let's say Obi played badly, really doesn't do a whole lot, whereas Maul played badly. Well, you're still hitting really hard and you're pulling something. Like there's a pretty
honestly
good.
put this as
pattern
an
there.
audience call again. If there's a reason why you think OB isn't performing well right now compared to like what's doing well, I'd love to hear it. I'm definitely curious on this one. Taking a look, one that I think is grossly, and I mean grossly underperforming. Aiden is sitting at a 43% win rate with 135 games. Not really, I guess. Aiden Morgan is at a 62% win rate, but that just tells me that Morgan box is good. Everything else is kind of every other Empire parent, like Moff Aiden, 36, Aiden GI, 44%. There's a fair amount of games on a couple of these, and she has just not been performing well. The only exception to that is Never Tell Me the Odds. She has a 63% win rate there, but we are 40 or below on any other mission.
I don't get it. Think the Aiden list is still just as killy as it was before, and Revenge isn't that popular right now, so I don't know what's happening. But
especially with the EST change, and maybe this is people still playing some old lists with like I'm playing ISF and I'm playing like Dark Troopers. You are playing Aiden and have not put ESTs in your list. Change that immediately.
It's stupid. Like
it really is incredible. I think if you're playing GI as your pairing, also try Callus over Hask. I think GI is mandatory to make that work. You just don't have enough force to do it without GI in the pairing. But I've been very happy with that. I expect someone on a competitive level to pick up Aiden and go for a run.
Yeah. And like with Aiden, it's very much you're relying on just going pedal to the metal. There's no like I feel like there is some people hedging their bets. And you can't do that because she just doesn't support not going all in on killing things.
If you're not wounding, you're not doing it right. Yeah, I don't think I've had a game in playing this so far longer than 45 minutes.
Yeah, you haven't played a whole lot.
No, I think I'm like 3 games with the list so far. I do see very easily because like by the end of those quick games, like I've got supports double wounded. I've got like if the game goes long, I'm probably also in a bad spot.
Because again, to what I said, the defense just isn't there. You're trying to kill faster than you get killed.
Yes, that is 100% the play. I'd be interested to see how that would run up against like a boss hunter or against Lumi Grievous now as a pretty mainstay in the aggro space.
I think it would struggle into Lumi Grievous, to be honest. There's a lot of hit points there.
There is a lot of hit points there. So I'd want to play that matchup, though. Now, that's also very weak defense. So
true.
Maybe I'd be interested to see how that plays out. A couple others, I think Jedi Hunter Vader, we kind of talked about when we talked about Kiadi, but also is underperforming from where I certainly expected. This one might not change, though. I think the meta is just a bit more different than I think we expected it to be.
Jedi Hunter Vader he's from a different era because you can't get away with just a unit that just walks forward, beats on things, and doesn't contribute to the team.
Yeah,
like
there's a
lot
reason
of these low ones are like that.
Yeah, there's a reason why his best performance is with Kiadi because you're getting a trigger off of those wounds, right?
Yeah.
Without a way to generate value off of those wounds, I think he's in a tough spot. And like there's really no space where he's performing particularly well. There's not really a variance between the missions. This is one I think we just got wrong.
Yeah, I would agree. And like even when we were making predictions, it was he plays with Kiadi.
Yes.
There was no question of him being good anywhere else. And that Kiadi list is doing decently, but it's still not great.
Next one I have up here, I think, is probably my most perplexed. And I'm going to pull her up to talk about her at the same time, is Ewoks in general, but specifically Low Gray, Freedom Fighter Leia as a pairing. My feeling with this list prior to rebalance was that it was really close. It was one of the lists that was just kind of held back by your Cassian list, by your Delta lists, and couldn't play with those guys, but was like just under that with the rest of the good stuff in a way that I thought would really flourish post rebalance. We've got a decent games. Low Gray sitting at a 45% win rate. Leia's at 39. Titus, why isn't this list working?
I don't know. It could just be that what it's trying to do other lists do better, and the people that are playing it are wanting to play it for thematic reasons, or they're doing it because it's something they already enjoyed before.
Yeah.
But like,
In
that's
all
all just
fairness,
speculation.
yeah, it could be. We haven't just had the right pilot really take this list to where it could be. But when I look at the pieces, prior to rebalance, there's very little Ewoks in it. The only Ewok was Logray. We now have buffed trappers and hunters, with the trappers being significantly better than they were before. Where I think you drop the Pathfinders that were previously taken in the Logray list for the trappers, I think is the right call there. Where Leia's still taking 3PO and the Rebel Commandos. Obviously, Rebel Commandos had the nerf to infiltrate. And I do think that did slow down some openings that this list could do a bit.
So I do have one thought, and it's that the Ewoks are trying to do a similar thing to what the droids are doing, but the buff to the Separatists was more significant to a faction that is more popular. So you get a lot of the people wanting to play that playstyle going towards Separatists. Couple that with the fact that the droids, so like the B2s got an attack buff that is similar to strength in numbers, because it's essentially adding 2 dice. Now the B2s, it's a reroll, but same sort of deal.
Yeah.
The B2s just have to be within range 3. They have much less setup. The Ewoks have to have something in melee with the target. And as we've seen with Aura Singh, if you can't set that up on the same turn, it doesn't happen nearly as often as you think it does. Because when you go with Cassian or CT, who have the same ability, it triggers a lot more frequently. But with Aura Singh, I've played a lot of her recently, and I've gotten it maybe twice over 5 or 6 games.
So I do want to give a clarification that the Ewoks, the supports, have a better version of it than the rest.
Yes, because they can give it to themselves.
Yeah, so as long as you're in melee.
Yeah, one of them doesn't like to be in melee generally. So like,
which I think is why you're playing, like, I don't think you're playing the hunters right now.
Yeah.
Unless Chirp is in the mix.
Yeah. My point was more, it's a more restrictive ability than the B2's version is, because the B2s are just range
compared to the B2s.
Period.
Yes.
So if you want that play style, it just makes more sense to go to the droids.
Well, and I also think, to that point, Stormtroopers are doing something similar.
Yeah. I mean, they didn't get buffed except by Veers, but agreed.
Well, you also got Lieutenant, and Morgan being added as a whole.
Yeah, but Morgan, Box, and the Snowtrooper buffs were very much more defensive playstyle.
But I think Logray falls into that, right? Logray's giving that list-wide defensive buff. Like, again, if we're going for a droid comparison, this list is way tankier.
I agree. I think if you're looking at Ewoks, you're looking at the aggressive potential, because it's all the bonus attacks. It's the ability to add dice to all your rolls. I don't think you're going to Ewoks I don't think you're going to Ewoks for that defensive unit flood kind of potential. The Stormtroopers are a different breed there.
Then I think this actually might be a case of it might be attracting the wrong playstyle to what I think the list really shines for. Because when I look at this list, I see an exceptionally mobile, highly defensive list.
Maybe.
And this
I haven't seen it in play.
That's fair. We don't have anyone locally. Like, I know Josh dabbles in Ewoks sometimes, and I know Alex out in Kitchener-Waterloo loves his Ewoks, but we don't get to see him very much. Honestly, I don't see them often. I like playing them.
I loved playing them when we did last draft, but I just have a hard time putting them on the table, because there's always so many things I want to try, and they don't stand out.
Yeah, my only other thought is, are the big meta pieces right now, or at least your commonly played stuff, are they heavily affected by Coordinated Fire Expose? And I think there's a lot of clone armor equivalent running around.
Yeah, I think if you wanted to really test the Ewok buffs, there's a good argument to be had for Logray Chirpa, because, like you said, the Coordinated Fire Expose doesn't do as much right now, and just maybe having a revenge, having a extra attack die on every attack, that might be enough to be more relevant.
I'll give you that Sherpa's doing the best of the three.
Like I haven't seen it at all, and it was one of the things I was excited about for like during the rebalance. But like, there's so much stuff, and it just it doesn't hit the top 10.
This might push me to bring out some bears.
You've said that about like 4 different things now, though.
I have. I really, really have. Okay, some other quick notes for the sake of time. Han Solo at a 41% win rate also doesn't seem quite right to me.
He'll make a comeback. He always does.
And that's 100%. He's going to have a bit of a dip and then win a GT because that's what Han does. So Titus, Grand Inquisitor is at a 42% win rate. Not particularly excelling at any mission. His best is Sabotage Showdown at 48, but Strategic is 36, Odds is 29. He would be one with the spot where I thought Inquisitors were at in like a GI Moff kind of list, or like Thrawn being back in the mix. I really thought was going to be in a better spot. What is our friend the Grand Inquisitor missing?
Our friend the Grand Inquisitor is torn between two things. He wants a killy list, and he wants Inquisitors. Inquisitors do not kill things.
Well,
they displace, they play control, they do tiebreakers, and none of those things are what Grand Inquisitor himself wants to be doing. So, like, if you take him with Inquisitors, I feel like there's just better options. Moff Gideon being the main one. Like, I feel like if you want an Inquisitor-focused list, there's a real strong argument to be had for Moff Gideon plus Thrawn or Moff Gideon plus Vader, and I don't think either of those options are great either.
I feel like with Moff Thrawn, you only end up playing Fifth Brother. I feel like in the moment you add Third Sister into the mix, you end up playing GI as the primary.
I'm not convinced of that though.
Yeah.
I feel like Grand Inquisitor just has miserably bad activations unless you have Jedi Hunter Vader. And if you have Jedi Hunter Vader, you've got other problems with the list where there's just not much mobility in a list that needs a lot of mobility.
So every time I've ever went to build a list with Grand Inquisitor and Jedi Hunter Vader, I look at the end result and say, Jedi Hunter with Kiadi is just a better list that does the exact same thing.
Yeah. Or Grand Inquisitor with Moff is also a better list.
Is a better Inquisitor list.
Because you're still adding 1 die, but you're not taking damage, and you also have more mobility. Like it's just Grand Inquisitor has a crisis of not being focused on the Inquisitor, like what the Inquisitors do well. But then if you go the killy route, we're seeing that's not going well either. I don't necessarily know why.
Yeah, you end up with better variants elsewhere. And it might just be he's just not the best at either role.
Yeah, like he does decently in both spots, but Empire would probably rather a dedicated platform for either thing rather than a general unit.
The other 2 things I will say about our friend the Grand Inquisitor: Empire got a great new box in Morgan. Empire got very buff stormtroopers post rebalance. GI does not play well with either of them. You're not taking him in a stormtrooper list. You are not taking him with Morgan, I think, in any successful way, because again, she also wants stormtroopers hanging out. And I think the new hot stuff just doesn't involve him.
Yeah. And on top of that, a lot of what was helping Grand Inquisitor is Fifth Brother with Enfeeble Expose. Yep. And as we've already talked about with Freedom Fighter Leia, Expose isn't great in the current meta. Because one of our top units is Padme, who has possibly the worst defensive expertise in the game.
Yep. That's an interesting take. And I think the last point I'll say on Grand Inquisitor is all of this is true. All of this, I think, has valid reasons that make sense. But also, if there was an event this weekend and Grand Inquisitor won a GT, I also would be like, yeah, okay.
I would expect it to probably be Grand Inquisitor Iden, personally.
Yes.
But I could see Grand Inquisitor Moff also stealing, making an upset.
Popping up, because I think with some expertise in that list, I think that list still does some very cool stuff. And
I think Inquisitors have a very good matchup into the defensive Morgan Veers type stuff. But I think they do badly against what other things we have in the meta.
Yeah, and I think as a final point I'll make on GI, I do not think that we've had as many Force users running around as we thought we would.
Mm.
All factors. But that was the last primary I had on my list.
I would like to mention Hera.
Yes,
Yeah. Hera is the absolute bottom of the rankings, and what's the percentage there actually? Because
35%.
Yeah, I don't
and only
understand
37 games played. Like,
yeah. So part of it is games played, but like we were very much expecting her to be actually doing very well in this meta, and she is very like bottom. And a lot of it is like a lot of her pairings were with Kanan, right? So like that part, if you're going full specters, the supports aren't great. So maybe it's just that, but I don't know. Like I expect her to do better than in the 30s.
yeah, because our thought going into this flip of a meta was, well, the reason why you weren't seeing Hera is because Hera was a bad pairing with Cassian, and if you're playing Rebels, why aren't you playing Cassian? And that isn't the logic anymore. We're not in that space anymore. But Hera is honestly having less games than she was before and really not performing well. And I know locally we've played around with some Han Hera was a conversation.
I think Jin Hera is her best pairing right now, and there's not a single game played with it.
Well, Titus, time to prove a point.
Okay. Yeah. And like, I don't know that I'm the best person to prove that point, but we'll see how it goes.
I do need you, Titus. I need two things. Look at me right now.
Okay.
Don't double hurt yourself if you're going to try that list. One, Bazin Shirt needs to be in it.
I'm not sold on that.
Two,
I
Callus
really want
needs to be in it.
I really want Callus and Ezra, so I don't know how I get Bazin Shirt in there.
I also really want Callus and Ezra.
Like that, which makes the other support kind of rough.
But if you're playing Callus and Ezra, should you just be playing Kanan?
No, because I don't want to play Callus with Hera without Jin, because Force costs get astronomical.
Yeah. Well,
like
maybe this is why it ends up falling down. But yeah, in short, my take on just kind of deep diving into this and seeing the win rates is one, I think we discussed this quite a bit in the middle here, that like mission selection is a really interesting point and is going to be a key to the conversation. The other one is like, again, some of these numbers still don't seem quite right. And I think we have a lot more settling to do as we get through a more competitive season. We start having some more GTs happen. This is still going to flip upside down. And I think there's going to be a lot of upsets to still to come as it settles. What I can say really confidently is I think this is the healthiest this game has ever been from a meta standpoint. I am honestly having a ton of fun every single list I put on.
Yep. And every game feels doable. Like, I haven't had any games where it felt like I had no chance just based on lists, or even just midway through the game where something activates and it's just like, well, I've lost because they rolled average. I'm not getting that anymore. Whereas with last meta, there was a good amount of that.
Yeah, I think we're in a great state. I think I'm excited to see the exploration into what's good, what's bad, and as this continues to evolve. And I think a lot of what's currently at that high win rate it's based off people, right? And I think we're in a state where when I look at what's defining a meta, I'm looking more at players that I expect to go putting up good results, more so than I'm looking at lists or what primaries I decide to take. And I think we are currently with the volume of games we have going in and the amount of events being played, what has a high win rate is defined as what great players are taking right now. And whether that lines up to those being the best lists, I think is very much up in the air.
Yeah, I think skill expression is a huge part of it right now.
And at an all-time high.
Yeah. And a part of it is also just, what have people been practicing? Like, you're still going to be getting people who it's the first thing they latched onto after the rebalance, because most of us, and I know this isn't the case for some, but most of us get like 1, maybe 2 games a week. Some people even less than that. So like, we're only 2 months in. You're just now getting to even like a medium amount of expertise with a list. Yeah. So it could legitimately still just be, oh, these are the things that look big and flashy.
Yeah, I think I think I walked into a great spot where pre-rebalance, I was playing a lot of Mace Padme and walked into Mace Padme being a legitimate contender of a list. So like this was already something I was playing in a very similar form. Yes, Padme changed, but which did change some approach to the list, but I was able to walk in with a lot of experience with this particular pairing and this particular construction, right? And I think it's going to take a while for that all to settle and what's good, what people like, and what people were just playing because it was the new shiny thing. So
I'm definitely interested in exploring about the new mission meta though, because like some of those preconceptions I had about the missions
are just
have been completely
crushed by
disproven.
data.
They're just wrong.
Yeah, I know I'm in exactly the same boat, and I've been grinding a lot of strategic positions, and some of these cases seem like maybe that's not the right call. So that's definitely one I'm going to be exploring a bit more. I think I want to play some more Never Tell Me the Odds because it's not one that we see locally a lot, and I'm curious to where things kind of fall there. But I'm excited to play more games. Again, this is the best this game has ever felt.
Yeah, like it's in a really great spot. There's been a couple other times where I felt similar, like
Post the last rebalance,
post last rebalance, the first like like month 8 to like month 11 was pretty good too. But like like we're in a good spot.
Yeah, it's a ton of fun. I have more lists I want to play than I have time to possibly play them all.
Yeah,
which is a fun predicament to be in. Titus, I know we had a backup plan for a primary in case this conversation was short. It was not short at all,
just a little bit long.
So we'll leave that for next time. But I hope you enjoyed the conversation. If there's another primary that we didn't touch on that you're curious where they stand or have some thoughts on our thoughts on where things are currently at and where they're going to be. As always, the link to the Discord is in the show notes. Jump in. There's been some great conversations going on lately, specifically around how do we get the community back in and going and games going. And I think just games being played on tables is where that starts and ends every single time. So get out to your local store, play when you can, and let's get some bigger events going again.
Well, have a good night, everybody.
Night, everyone.